Scottie Scheffler is the best golfer on the planet right now, and he is walking into the most loaded moment of his career with something to say. Not just about the US Open and the career Grand Slam sitting one tournament away from completion, but about the people running the sport, the rules they are imposing, and whether professional golf is still rewarding the right things. This is not a simple preview of a major championship. This is the story of the world number one taking a stand against the institutions that govern his sport, weeks before the one event that could define his legacy forever. To understand why Scheffler's reaction matters more than anyone else's right now, you first need to understand the scale of what has been happening inside professional golf over the last 6 months. It started at the very top of the PGA Tour. Brian Rollback arrived in 2026 as the new CEO, coming over from the NFL, and almost immediately began restructuring the competitive landscape of professional golf. Field sizes at full field events were cut from 156 players down to 144. Smaller events shrank from 132 to 120. And most controversially, the number of fully exempt tour cards was slashed from 125 down to 100, meaning 25 players who previously held guaranteed status on tour now have none. The official explanation from the tour was pace of play. The players did not accept that for a second. Veterans like Lucas Glover were among the most outspoken. "I think it's terrible." And then hiding behind pace of play, "I think challenges our intelligence." "They think we're stupid," Glover told Golfweek. Matt Fitzpatrick, one of the fastest players on tour and a former US Open champion himself, publicly backed Glover's position. "He's so right, pathetic that pace of play is spoke about every year and nothing ever gets done," Fitzpatrick posted on social media. Fitzpatrick then went further, calling out the tour for what he described as an outrageous lack of actual slow play penalties throughout its history. But the change that truly lit the sport on fire did not come from the PGA Tour at all. It came from above it entirely, from the USGA and the R&A, the two governing bodies that control golf worldwide. Their decision was the golf ball rollback. Beginning in 2028, professional golfers will be required to use a ball that travels meaningfully shorter than the one they play with today. Estimates from officials suggest a reduction of around 12 yards, while independent testing has produced figures closer to 15 to 20 yards. The stated reason is course preservation. Modern players hit the ball so far that classic courses, including some of the most historic venues in the sport, have been rendered obsolete as genuine tests of elite golf. The reaction from the players was fierce. Justin Thomas delivered one of the most memorable critiques of any governing body decision in recent memory. "My reaction was disappointed and also not surprised, to be honest. I think the USGA over the years has, in my eyes, it's harsh, but made some pretty selfish decisions. They definitely, in my mind, have done a lot of things that aren't for the betterment of the game, although they claim it." Thomas pushed even further, drawing a direct analogy. "People are running faster, so what? Are they just going to make the length of a mile longer so that the fastest mile time doesn't change? Or are they going to put the NBA hoop at 13 feet because people can jump higher now?" Bryson DeChambeau called it the most atrocious, uninspiring thing you could possibly do to golf. On the other side, Rory McIlroy publicly supported the rollback, writing, "I don't understand the anger about the golf ball rollback. It will make no difference whatsoever to the average golfer and puts golf back on a path of sustainability." The biggest names in the game were now split down the middle, fighting each other publicly over the future of the sport. So where does the world number one stand in all of this? This is where it gets important, because Scottie Scheffler does not operate like Thomas or DeChambeau. He is not bombastic, he does not chase headlines. When he speaks on an issue, he chooses his words carefully, which is exactly why his reaction carries so much weight with everyone inside the game. The core of Scheffler's frustration is not really about distance at all. It is about something deeper. His central belief is that the rules and setups of professional golf should consistently reward the best player, not introduce randomness into a competition that the greatest players in the world have spent their entire lives training to master. The clearest illustration of this came at the 2025 PGA Championship at Quail Hollow. The course was heavily waterlogged from significant rainfall in the days leading up to the tournament. Despite those conditions, officials chose not to allow players to lift, clean, and place their golf balls under preferred lies rules. The result was exactly the kind of chaos Scheffler argues should never decide a major championship. Scheffler hit a perfect drive into the fairway on the 16th hole, only for his ball to pick up mud. That mud ball sent his approach shot sideways, and he made a double bogey on one of the most critical holes on the course. "I understand how a golf purist would be. Oh, play it as it lies," Scheffler said afterward. but I don't think they understand what it's like literally working your entire life to learn how to hit a golf ball and control it and hit shots and control distance. And all of a sudden, due to a rules decision that is completely taken away from us by chance. In golf, there's enough luck throughout a 72-hole tournament that I don't think the story should be, whether or not the ball is played up or down. When I look at golf tournaments, I want the purest, fairest test of golf. That quote captures everything Scheffler believes about how the sport should be administered. He does not mind a hard test, he minds an unfair one. That same frustration resurfaced at the most recent major, the 2026 PGA Championship at Aronimink Golf Club in Pennsylvania. Scheffler was among the players openly critical of how the course had been set up, specifically the pin placements. "This is the hardest set of pin locations that I've seen since I've been on tour," he said. "And that includes US Opens, that includes Oakmont." He described some of the specific pin positions in extraordinary detail, calling one on the par 3 14th among the craziest he had ever encountered. "That was like they put the pin on like this microphone, like it was just like a high point. I hadn't seen anything like it." Justin Thomas echoed the sentiment. "Most of the pins today were, kind of absurd," Scheffler said directly. "They were just so far into the areas where we thought the pins were going to be." The leaderboard at Aronimink ended up historically bunched, with 21 players within 3 shots of the lead at one point. Aaron Rai, who had entered the week at plus 7,500 odds, walked away with the trophy. The outcome was exactly what Scheffler has consistently warned about. A setup that narrowed the gap between the great players and the rest by introducing unpredictability rather than rewarding precision. Scheffler was always careful to distinguish between difficulty and unfairness. He never accused Aronimink or Quail Hollow of being unfair courses. His argument was more precise than that. When the setup is pushed to an extreme that produces essentially random outcomes, the sport loses something fundamental. The best player should win more often than not. When rules decisions and pin placements works against that, the competition is diminished. The reason Scheffler's complaints land differently from those of almost anyone else in the sport comes down to one thing: what he has achieved. No player has been more dominant in golf over the last 5 years than Scottie Scheffler. He has 4 major championships, 2 Masters titles in 2022 and 2024, a 5-stroke victory at the 2025 PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, and a 4-stroke win at the 2025 Open Championship at Royal Portrush, claiming the Claret Jug. He has been world number 1 for what has felt like an uninterrupted stretch. He has won 19 times since the end of 2021, including an Olympic gold medal in Paris. He has been named PGA Tour Player of the Year for 4 consecutive seasons, a stretch only Tiger Woods has surpassed. Jordan Spieth, who grew up competing against Scheffler in junior golf in Dallas, put it plainly: "I don't think I've ever gotten onto his level of iron play, not that anybody has." When a player this dominant tells you a rule is bad for golf, it is not the complaint of someone struggling to keep up. It carries a different weight entirely. It is the assessment of the most qualified golfer alive on the subject of what separates great players from the rest, and whether the current direction of the sport is honoring or undermining that separation. For all of that dominance, one major championship has refused to cooperate with Scottie Scheffler's greatness. The US Open, Masters 1, PGA Championship 1, the Open Championship 1. The US Open remains the only piece missing from a career Grand Slam. If he captures it, he becomes just the 7th man in the entire history of golf to complete it, joining Gene Sarazen, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and most recently Rory McIlroy. In 8 career appearances at the US Open, Scheffler has never won. His best finish was a runner-up in 2022. He has contended, posted multiple top 10s, and shown that the course style is not beyond him. But the tournament has never bent to him the way most of the rest of professional golf has. The lowest point came at the 2024 US Open at Pinehurst, where he stumbled to a tie for 43rd, and described the game of golf as a mental torture chamber. And then there is the detail that has the entire golf world talking. The 2026 US Open runs from June 18th to June 21st. That final round on June 21st falls on Scottie Scheffler's 30th birthday, completing the career Grand Slam, becoming one of the immortals of the sport, on the day he turns 30. The stars, as many have noted, appear to be aligning. Here is where everything comes together, and where the story takes its sharpest turn. The 2026 US Open is being hosted by the USGA, the very governing body whose ball rollback decision Scheffler's peers have been publicly criticizing for months. And it is being held at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Southampton, New York, one of the most brutal and unforgiving venues in American golf history. The last time the US Open visited Shinnecock was 2018. Brooks Koepka won that year at just 1 over par. The third round produced a scoring average above 75, and players walked off the course publicly calling the setup broken and unfair. This is precisely the type of environment that Scheffler has spent months warning about. Fast, punishing, operating on the edge of chaos, where a bad bounce or an extreme pin can take a perfect shot and turn it into a double bogey. Scheffler is walking into a test run by the people he has been most critical of, on a course with a documented history of producing exactly the kind of luck-driven outcomes he has argued against all year. Despite never having won the US Open, Scottie Scheffler enters Shinnecock Hills as the clear betting favorite. He sits at plus 460 to plus 490 on FanDuel Sportsbook, shorter than any other player in the field. Rory McIlroy, fresh off winning the Masters earlier in 2026, is next at plus 800 to plus 950. Jon Rahm, who finished tied for second at Aronimink, is third in the market at plus 1100 to plus 400. Scheffler's 2026 form justifies the favoritism. He has 1 win and 5 top-5 finishes in 8 starts, including 2 runner-up results in his last 2 tournaments. His game is building toward peak form at exactly the right moment in the schedule. The Sportsline model, which has correctly called 17 majors entering this week, including 3 in 2025, has flagged Ludvig Åberg as a credible dark horse. Åberg has finished in the top 10 in 6 of his last 7 tournaments, ranks second on the PGA Tour in total strokes gained, and sits second in total driving strokes gained heading into the week. The model also advises fading Xander Schauffele despite his subless 2,000 odds, citing a quiet stretch since his 2 major victories in 2024. There is also an unnamed long shot around 31 that the model identifies as a serious contender. The central irony at the heart of this entire story is this: Scottie Scheffler's biggest complaint about modern professional golf, that rules, decisions, and course setups are introducing randomness and taking skill out of the equation, is now the single biggest threat standing between him and history. He is the best player in the world. He is openly skeptical of the institution hosting the tournament. He is walking onto the most punishing course they control. And he has his 30th birthday, a career Grand Slam, and a place alongside the immortals of the sport, all riding on the outcome. If Scheffler wins at Shinnecock Hills on June 21st, he silences every doubt, joins Sarazen, Hogan player Nicklaus, Woods, and McIlroy in the most exclusive club in golf, and does it on his birthday. If the setup bites him the way Shinnecock has bitten so many before, everything he has said about the direction of the sport will look painfully accurate. Either way, Scottie Scheffler has made his position clear. Now he has to prove it the only way that matters. With a golf club in his hands, on the toughest test the game can offer, against the governing body he does not fully trust. The whole golf world will be watching.